Look, stop for a second. You are here, right now, not as a concept, as a fact. You are sitting, breathing, seeing. Light is hitting your eyes. Air is entering your lungs. Your heart is working, quietly, constantly. And you don't feel most of it, because your body is good at hiding effort. Now notice this. Everything around you is also here. The chair, the floor, the room, the planet. The planet is spinning, fast, every second, and none of it asks permission. Existence just shows up. No warning, no manual, no explanation attached. We call it normal, but it is not normal. It is weird, deeply weird, and I want to talk about that. Not in a spooky way, not in a ghost story way, in a serious way, in a clean way, because there is a question hiding inside everyday life. A question science does not finish. Science is powerful. Physics is powerful. We can predict eclipses. We can land machines on Mars. We can measure time incredibly well. We can describe black holes. We can write equations for atoms. We can model the early universe. And that is real. That is not poetry. But there is a limit, a boundary. And the boundary is not a failure. It is a definition. Here's the question. Why is there anything at all? Not why this chair exists. Not why the sky is blue. I mean, why is reality here? Why is there a world? Why is there something instead of nothing? Now, people react in two ways. Some people feel excited. They want the ultimate answer. Some people feel annoyed. They think the question is pointless. I want neither reaction. I want clarity. So let's move slowly. Start with a small example. You wake up. There is coffee on the stove. You ask, why is the coffee hot? Easy. Because the flame is burning. The flame heats the metal heats the water heats the coffee. Fine. Then you ask, why is there a flame? Because you lit it. Why did the match ignite? Because friction raised the temperature. Chemistry kicked in. Why does chemistry release heat? Because electrons rearrange. Energy moves into motion. Motion becomes heat. And you can keep asking, why? And here's the interesting thing. Most of the time, science answers. It gives you a chain, a clean chain, cause to cause. Physics is great at this. Physics explains how heat moves, how molecules vibrate, how matter behaves. It traces the chain backward, from coffee to chemistry to atoms to particles, from you to Earth to the sun to stars to galaxies. And if you keep going, you reach the early universe, hot, dense, simple. We call it the Big Bang. Now listen carefully. At that moment, the mind does what it always does. It asks another why. What caused that? What lit the fuse? And here something changes. You don't just lack data. You hit a category wall. The question shifts. You are no longer asking, how does this event happen? You are asking, why is there a system at all? You are asking for the origin of the rules. And rules do not explain why rules exist. Let me make it simple. Imagine chess. You watch a chess match, a brilliant one. You study the moves. You learn strategy. You learn the rules. You get very good. Now someone asks you, why is there chess? Why are there 64 squares? Why these pieces? Why these rules? What can you say? You can describe chess perfectly. But chess rules do not create chess. They assume chess already exists. Physics is like that. The laws of physics are like rules. They describe behavior. They describe patterns. They predict outcomes, but they don't tell you why there is a game in the first place. They assume there is something to describe. Now another picture. Imagine an ant on a balloon. A very smart ant. The ant walks, measures distances, does math. The ant discovers the surface is curved. The ant notices the balloon is expanding. Dots on the surface move apart every day. The ant extrapolates backward and says, long ago the dots were closer. Maybe all together. That's good physics. But can the ant explain why there is a balloon? No. The ant can only model the balloon from inside. We are like that ant. We are inside the universe. We can describe expansion. We can model early conditions. But why is there a universe is not the same type of question. Now, some people say maybe the question is wrong. They say, what came before the Big Bang might not make sense. Like asking, what is south of the South Pole? At some point, you run out of south. Okay, maybe. But notice something. Even if the question before is wrong, the deeper question remains. Why is there anything? Even if time starts at the Big Bang, why does it start at all? Now let's be careful here. A lot of modern talk says, the universe came from nothing. You hear this everywhere. Quantum fluctuations, vacuum energy, particles popping in and out. People love this story. So let's slow down. The quantum vacuum is not nothing. Say it again. The quantum vacuum is not nothing. It is a state, the lowest energy state. It has structure, it has rules, it has fields. Fields are not nothing. If you have a field, you already have something. So when people say, the universe came from nothing, ask them what they mean. If they mean quantum vacuum, that is not nothing. That is a physical system, obeying laws. Here's an analogy. Imagine I tell you, I made a fist appear from nothing. Amazing, right? But then you notice, my hand was there the whole time. I just curled my fingers. The fist did not come from nothing. It came from an existing hand in a new configuration. That's what particles from vacuum is like. The vacuum is the hand. Particles are the fist. Something rearranges. But you still haven't explained why the hand exists. So even if a complete theory explains how universes form, you still ask, why is there that system? Why those laws? Why those fields? This is the part people avoid, because it doesn't end. It pushes back and back and back. And that is the point. Now another puzzle. Why does math describe reality so well? This is a real puzzle. We invent symbols. We invent structures. We play with patterns. And then the universe behaves like the math. Not approximately, often exactly. It's strange, because math feels like something in the mind, and physics is something in the world, yet they match. It's like the world speaks mathematics. Why? Now you might say, well, because we chose the math that fits. Sure, that's part of it, but it doesn't remove the weirdness, because the fact remains. There exists a deep order, stable enough, clean enough, that it can be captured by equations. Why is the universe ordered at all? Why not chaos? Why not no rules? Now you might hear another claim. If we find a theory of everything, we will answer everything. I don't think so, because a theory of everything is still a theory. It describes relations. It describes structure. It describes behavior. But it still leaves the given. Why does that structure exist? Why does it apply? Even if you had the final equation, you could still ask, why this equation? Why not another? Why any equation? Now, some people respond with one word, brute fact. They say, the universe just is. No explanation, no reason. That is possible, but notice what it does. It doesn't solve the mystery. It labels the mystery and walks away. It says, stop asking, and I get it. Sometimes that is honest. Sometimes I don't know is the only clean answer, but I want you to see something. Even if brute fact is true, the feeling of strangeness remains, because you are still standing inside existence, and existence is still here. Now I want to protect science here. This is not anti-science. Science is one of the best things humans have ever done. It gave us medicine. It gave us electricity. It gave us modern life. Physics revealed the age of the cosmos, the structure of atoms, the nature of light. It taught us that time can stretch, that space can curve, that particles behave like waves. These are treasures. But science is a method. It works by finding patterns, regularities, laws. A law requires something that behaves. A pattern requires something that patterns. Science needs a world to study. So science can tell you, given the world, here is how it works. But why is there a world is not a scientific question. It is a metaphysical question. Metaphysics just means the nature of reality itself. not the details inside it. Now, one more analogy. Imagine a video game, a sophisticated one, beautiful physics engine. Now imagine the characters are conscious. They study their world. They find laws. They write equations. They discover deep code-like regularities. Could they ever prove why the game exists? Could they ever see the programmer? Maybe not. Not because they are stupid. Because they are inside the system, and the system can't contain its own origin story in the way they want it. Now, I'm not saying we live in a simulation. Don't take it there. I'm saying something simpler. We have limits. We are inside the thing we study. And there may be questions that cannot be answered from the inside. Now, here's the beautiful part. That limit is not depressing. It is honest. It tells you where the sidewalk ends. Science builds the sidewalk. Long, strong, reliable. But at the edge, it can't build further, not because it failed, because its tools are for a different job. And beyond that edge, you don't get a final answer. You get wonder. You get humility. You get the recognition that reality is deeper than our models. Now, what does that change for your life? Not much on the surface. You still wake up. You still drink coffee. You still work. You still love people. But it can change your inner posture. You might walk around with more awe. Not fake awe, not dramatic awe, real awe, because it is genuinely strange that anything exists, and you exist inside it. You are not outside looking in. You are part of the mystery. You are made of the same stuff. Your atoms were forged in stars, carbon, oxygen, iron, stellar furnaces, explosions, time. And even that story, as beautiful as it is, doesn't finish the why. Why were there stars? Why was there matter? Why were there laws? The chain keeps going until it reaches a point where the mind has no handle. And that's okay. It is okay to not close the loop. It is okay to live with an open question. Some people hate that. They want closure. They want the universe to be fully explained. But I think there is something liberating here. It means reality is not exhausted. It means we have not reached the bottom. It means there is more. Now I want to end where I started. You are here. And that fact is not small. It is the biggest fact there is, because every other fact depends on it. And physics, as magnificent as it is, does not explain the existence of the stage. It explains what happens on the stage. So here's my question. When you realize that science has a boundary, how do you feel? More curious or more frustrated? Either answer is honest, but if you are curious, good, because curiosity is the cleanest response to mystery. And if you're frustrated, that's also human. It means you care. It means you want understanding. And that desire, that drive to ask why, is one of the most beautiful things the universe has produced. Thank you for listening.